Hello there, and welcome to Reach for Power, where we take a closer look at the power itself and the strategies to build it. I am your host, Monika Kruk, and today we are going to have a look at the barriers which might stand on your way in terms of building your influence. I have listed 10 of the most popular ones and covered the first 5 in the previous episode. In this one, we will complete the list. Just to recap from last time, the 5 roadblocks that we already covered were lack of awareness, lack of knowledge, assuming that power is not applicable to you, perceiving power as inherently bad, and perceiving power as not in line with your values. Now to move to the barrier number 6, that pursuing power is not in line with my personality. I often hear this statement from my coaches and students who self-describe themselves as shy, introverted, or overall antisocial. I am happy to report that this is a common misconception in terms of power. Nobody said that in order to reach for power, you have to follow one set of predefined strategies, and the only way to get there is to become a bubbly extrovert life of the party. Full stop. I keep repeating across all the strategies that we discussed that as in any other activity, you need to experiment to find your own style and the approaches that fit your unique circumstances, characteristics, beliefs, and audience. And yes, there are ways and variants to the general strategies that allow you to adjust the level of human contact intensity, level of exposure to social interactions, or the need to modify your overall demeanor. As an example, I still vividly recall one of my co-workers in the previous corporate world who self-described as the ultimate introvert. He typically chose to fade into the background at our corporate meetings. One day, however, one of his personally led projects was discussed. There was a plan to close it down, and he was not having it. For the first time ever, he raised his hand and in his calm yet highly persuasive tone explained the reasons why it is not a great idea. He owned the room. He did not do any of the great show with a cold buffet and a sing-song, so to speak, as some of our team members performed at times. Yet he had power and he secured his resources. Barrier number 7. Being overly worried about the reaction of others. This is one of my absolute favorites. We tend to be so deeply obsessed with ourselves that we spend considerable amount of time debating what others might say or quite defiantly proclaiming that we do not care, which is basically the same thing, by the way. The approach to this barrier is brilliantly summarized in the following quote. And by all means, if you know the author, please drop me the name through LinkedIn message. And I'm quoting, "What others think of you is none of your business." Why? Because they typically don't. They are too busy thinking about themselves. Another example which I often use when my coaches say that they are too afraid to publish anything on social media because people will laugh them off, my typical reply is, unless you plan to the excessive use of profanities and you intend to make your message rude, you have good chances of being completely unnoticed. I dare you to quote the post that you have read this morning in any social media feed. I double dare you. You see the point? Barrier number 8. Cultural barriers. This one is actually a legitimate factor to take into consideration. Yet please pay attention to phrasing, factor, and not a barrier. If a behavior or a gesture is not socially accepted in the given cultural setting, it is not effective to pursue it in an unchanged form which you already tested in another setting. It might require a different form, it might require separate experimentation, it might need some time to find a new way to do it, yet it does not mean that changing your location automatically takes away power building options from you. The key reason behind it is that intrinsic reasons why people look for power and want power stay the same across the continents. It might be just a question of understanding how particular population does it. To illustrate the point, one of the examples specific to my culture is that in Poland, men used to kiss the newly met women on the hand to show respect and appreciation, almost like to build relationship. This tradition was slowly fading away and got completely killed by COVID restrictions. Yet not so long ago, especially among the older generation, it was not unusual. Can you imagine transferring this custom to a business meeting in one of the global multinational corporations? This said, finding a new way of showing respect and appreciation for a newly met person might do the trick in terms of setting foundations for your future business relationship. Barrier number 8, our upbringing. This is one of the most difficult ones to overcome for a simple reason that it has been around with us for a very long time and became effectively our second nature. We might have been taught not to speak up, not to stand out from the crowd, not to attract too much attention, not to toot our own horn. Being raised in a country under communist influence, I know exactly what you mean when this issue is being raised by you. This said, it might be helpful to look at this one through the following lenses. What might have made sense back then might not make sense anymore now. World is changing, environment is changing, social norms are changing. What might have worked well for our grandparents and parents and was forwarded to us with their best intentions might not do us any favors today. And yes, it is extremely difficult to let go of our childhood-bound beliefs. It is also, by definition, the only way to grow up. Barrier number 10, impostor phenomenon. The impostor phenomenon was mentioned for the first time in literature in 1978 by the psychotherapists Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes. In the course of their practice, they came across a surprising find which they observed in successful female patients and college students. Despite objective evidence in terms of patients' abilities, instead of gaining self-confidence based on their professional and academic prowess, they displayed doubts about their future performance, together with attributing their successes to external factors, such as hard work, luck, or charm. This substantial inconsistency between these individual self-perceptions and their accomplishments inspired both authors to propose the definition of impostor phenomenon, described as an internal experience of intellectual phoniness that appears to be particularly prevalent and intense among a select sample of high-achieving women, despite outstanding academic and professional accomplishments. Women who experience the impostor phenomenon persist in believing that they are really not bright and have fooled anyone who thinks otherwise. By the way, since then it has been proven that gentlemen are not excluded from impostor phenomenon. We are all in the same boat. If any of the above sounds familiar, you might consider looking for materials on impostor phenomenon online, together with guidelines on how to address it, as it is okay to have an impostor moment from time to time. It is key not to have an impostor life. To sum up, the 5 roadblocks that we discussed in this episode covered perception of power as not being in line with my personality, being worried about reactions of others, cultural barriers, upbringing barriers, and impostor phenomenon. If you want to better understand your personal barriers to building power and work on overcoming those, I am just one LinkedIn message away. If you liked today's episode, please subscribe to have regular access to the newly published content. You are also welcome to check Reach for Power website at reachforpower.com for more materials and share your thoughts and comments through LinkedIn. Thank you for joining me today, and keep on reaching for power.